August 15th, 1096. A fortified castle, somewhere in Normandy. In the main room of the castle, the lady of the manor is doing her tapestry work under a large portrait of an ugly young man, Nairod, her dear husband. The scene would be peaceful if the lady didn't seem so nervous. Her ugly and cruel husband is back from hunting with noisy friends and local prostitutes. He is very rude with his wife, who is afraid of him.
Please see that my friends get everything they need. We will retire in my private chambers. So, make sure we have plenty of wines, fowls, and poultry for the whole night.
The next day, the emissary of Prince Robert, Duke of Normandy, comes to the castle to recruit Nairod to join the crusade ordered by His Holiness Pope Urban II.
I, the emissary of Prince Robert, Duke of Normandy, have been ordered to recruit your husband to join the crusade in the name of His Holiness Pope Urban II.
In the courtyard, noisy departure of Nairod and his crew. Nairod and his troop meet up with the other knights on their way to Jerusalem. On the 20th of October 1097, the Crusaders start the siege of Antioch. On November 3rd, 1097, during one of the attack, Nairod is captured by Yaki Isayan, Emir of Antioch, who sends him to his worst jail. Nairod rots in a filthy jail where he is left starving and is subjected to the worst humiliations and tortures. He shows exceptional courage and dignity. Meanwhile, in his castle, back in Normandy, his large portrait becomes progressively less ugly. On December 30th, the Emir decides to get him whipped in public. Nairod doesn't flinch. Just as Nairod's resistance has reached its limits, an earthquake occurs. Meanwhile, in his castle, Nairod's portrait changes again, slightly showing some sort of greatness behind the ugliness of the traits. Nairod appears before the Emir and his chamberlain in the palace throne room. He is chained, dirty, unshaved, and is still wearing the same old rag. The Emir asks him to bow down in front of him, but Nairod refuses.
My one and only Lord and Master is God. He is the only one I obey.
The Emir realizes that it would be smarter to be careful with this man, whom his people now consider as a half-god.
So, barbaric knight, you have proved your courage and your faith. What should I do with you now? Would you rather die, slowly or quickly? What did you learn during the time you spent in my delicious jails? Speak.
I learnt to respect my God.
Good for you. So tell me, is your God better than mine?
The next day, Nairod is introduced into the Emir's private study. The luxury of the room is amazing considering that the city is besieged. After a while, a mutual esteem starts to build among the two men. The Emir invites Nairod at his table where they have deep conversations about spirituality. Far from the war raging outside the fortress walls, far from the rituals and the differences of religion, the Emir explains to Nairod the wisdom of ancient Greek philosophers.
Leave the rituals and the traditions to the ignorant, the superstitious and the fanatic ones. Raise your soul to spirituality. Open your heart to the true love of God. The unique God is not here to divide men, but to unite them, beyond beliefs and religions. 300 years before your prophet, in Athens, Epicurus believed that pleasure was the greatest good. But the way to attain pleasure was to live modestly and to gain knowledge of the workings of the world and the limits of one's desires. This led him to attain a state of tranquility, ataraxia, and freedom from fear, as well as wisdom. At the same time, in Athens, a man called Zeno of Citium taught the practice of meditation to live closer to nature and attain wisdom. As he was teaching under a porch in Athens, Agora, it received the name Stoicism. Stoics want to be free of suffering through peace of mind and the maintenance of equanimity in life, with wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance, as was taught by Plato. What is up to us is to reach ataraxia, inner peace, the stillness of the soul, which Stoics call true happiness through temperance. The Greek word Sophia, wisdom, inspired the Sufi philosophy, which is universal in nature, a pathway to the love of God, maintaining an union with the divine through which the human self melts away. The first poet who sang the love of Allah was a woman in the name of Rabia al-Adawiyah. Formerly a slave, she sought inner achievement through contemplation, wisdom, and love of Allah.
This is strangely fascinating. I'd love to have access to this knowledge. Why don't we know about all this in our countries?
These absurd wars must have a hidden meaning in this vast drama. Other knights after you will see behind victory or defeat, and new spiritual orders with esoteric agendas will soon appear in your countries. One of the first scriptures written by men in a faraway eastern country tells the story of a prince named Arjuna, who is debating with his god in the middle of a battlefield with armies on both sides ready to fight. Responding to the prince's confusion and moral dilemma about fighting his own brothers, God explains to Arjuna his duties as a warrior, his role in the larger picture, and elaborates on meditation and detachment to the fruits of action leading to liberation from false identifications.
Meanwhile, in his castle, back in France, Nairod's portrait changes again. The color of the eyes is turning into blue, and there is definitely something brighter about their radiance.
You have opened the door to a new world for me, a world about the self, and about life which I didn't even suspect existed. You have opened my soul to philosophy, wisdom, and spirituality beyond the obvious.
Chevalier, are you ready to dedicate your life to the search of truth? Are you ready to live in poverty, to lead an exemplary life, and to share truth with your fellow human beings? May God protect you, Chevalier, because you're going to need it. You will leave tonight through the Northwest St. George Gate, which we still control. You will wear a monk robe with a hood to cover your face. You'll be given a 3-day supply of water and food, and with that you will walk eastwards until you meet a caravan going through the Silk Road to Persia, then to Samarkand, an Islamic center for scholarly study. From there, your quest will take you to the big Himalayas mountains and to India, where you will find most of your answers.
Whatever happens to us, I hope we will meet again in some philosopher's heaven, far from this madness, so that I can honor your brilliant mind and your true heart in front of the world.
The two men give each other an accolade. In the middle of the night, the St. George Gate opens slightly just to let a solitary monk leave the city and walk away barefoot towards the desert and get lost in the moonless night. 10 years later, a poor and meager monk, Nairod, with his head covered by a hood, walks in the rainy night towards a castle in Normandy. The monk knocks at the main door.
Hospitality for a poor monk, please, my lord.
Noises of bolts and locks, and the door is finally opened on a fully dressed-up butler. The butler escorts Nairod to the kitchen. Nairod hears noise of a party going on upstairs. After her long widowhood,
The lady of the manor is getting married again to a comrade in arms of her previous husband, Nairod, who was reported dead in Antioch during the Crusade.
a maid brings Nairod a bowl of soup. Still wearing his hood over his head, Nairod is drinking slowly the hot soup while watching a large painting on the wall. Except for the frame, which is unchanged, he can hardly recognize his own portrait, which has obviously been relegated to the kitchen. The painting shows the beautiful face of an elder yet noble knight whose radiant blue eyes seem to reveal so much wisdom and inner peace. Suddenly, the lady of the manor bursts in the kitchen to give the last-minute orders to the servants for the party. She sees this poor monk wearing a hood over his head, sitting at the kitchen table, drinking a bowl of soup, staring in front of him at the painting of her deceased husband. The sight of this monk makes her stop in the middle of her sentence.
Who are you?
A poor monk on his way to his monastery asking for hospitality and a bowl of hot soup.
Has she recognized him, her ex-husband who has been declared dead during the Crusade? Today is the day she is going to be married again. So, it is the day to turn the page of her mourning and of her past. While the party is going on and everyone seems to enjoy themselves, the lady of manor leaves her guests and looks outside the window. She observes the poor and thin figure of the monk walking in the snow away from the castle, as if she had known, at first sight, who this monk really was.